Hi, welcome to the 14-day weather forecast. The meteorological winter is now on the home straight. It finishes at the end of February. So, do the final full 2 weeks hold any surprises in store? Well, I'm going to change things around a little bit today and start with the Sudden Stratospheric Warming watch. I'm not going to discuss what SSWs are, but the important thing to remember is that they increase the chance of cold weather in the UK 2 or 3 weeks after taking place. Is one on the way? Well, in a word, the answer is yes. A major SSW is forecast to take place. It's highlighted on this chart by a reversal of zonal winds at 60 degrees north, high up in the stratosphere. So instead of winds flowing from the west to the east, they go into an easterly direction. All of the runs in the GEFS model are showing that happening between around about the 15th of February and the 21st. The negative values here indicate a reversal, so an easterly flow. And just looking further down the line, zonal winds start to go back into a westerly phase, but only just. And then towards the end of February, they dip away once again. So it's a very interesting period coming up. An SSW is imminent. All of the runs in the GEFS and other computer models are forecasting one to happen from around about the 15th of February. But whether or not it's going to impact our weather is a very different question. I'm going to come back to the short term and look at the first week of the forecast period. The animation here runs from 18 GMT, Monday the 13th of February. To start off with, it's a quiet scene across all parts of the UK. It's dry with high pressure centred to the east, but if we keep an eye on the Atlantic, disturbances start to push in, mostly affecting the north and the west, but then going through Thursday and Friday, it looks as though there's a more changeable pattern beginning to develop with high pressure slipping further southwards. These disturbances having more influence even in southern and central regions. There's a good deal of uncertainty though about just how active they will be as they push down into southern Britain. Also through this period there is a chance of it turning very, very windy at times, especially around about the 17th. But then going through the weekend, it's changeable, although there are signals here that high pressure will be starting to build northwards once again, especially into the early part of next week, with the more changeable or unsettled conditions on this computer model run becoming confined again to the far northwest. Quite a lot taking place through the first week, but it doesn't look cold, and the air temperature sequence really highlights that. Again, starting 18 GMT, Monday the 13th, the yellows and oranges really over much of Western Europe are showing very mild air aloft. These charts are at about 1,500 meters above sea level. Running this forwards, what we see is the blue indicating cold air just flirts with the north at times, but really air temperatures are going to be close to or above the average for much of the first week. What does that mean though in terms of the temperatures that we can expect down at the ground level? 15 GMT, Valentine's Day, double figures really everywhere. It's very mild, 12, 13 Celsius. Nights though, still potentially quite chilly, at least early on. Clear skies, at least some clear periods, allowing temperatures to fall away under the calm conditions at this stage. 2s, 3s, 4s, so ground frost not out of the question. Moving forwards to Friday, still double figures, a little bit colder there in northern Scotland. And by Saturday, it's very, very mild indeed. 13s, 14s in southern Britain. Some computer models have shown temperatures going up to around 15 or even 16 during this period through the weekend. 06 GMT, Sunday the 19th, so minimums a lot milder now, 4s, 5s, 6s or 7s in most of the UK, so the frost risk really reducing. But I think it's just worth taking a look at the wind gusts through the first week, because as I mentioned on the animation, there is a possibility of it becoming very windy for a time at least. The chart here is generated from the UK Met Office Morgreps G Ensemble, and it's for London. Wind gusts initially from all the runs are closely packed together. There's good agreement, relatively calm conditions, 10, 20 miles an hour. But then from around the 16th, the 17th, the 18th, A few of the runs are showing gusts going up to or just above 40 miles an hour. So those are at the top end in southern Britain. But if we go up to Newcastle, look at this, around the 17th, one or two of the runs are going up to 70 miles an hour. This one here is just going slightly above it. And the majority of them are showing wind gusts of between 50 and 60 or maybe 65 miles per hour. Definitely something to keep an eye on. The charts here are the deterministic ones rather than the Mogreps G Ensemble. On the left, it's from the UK Met Office UKV model, and the right is the UK Met Office Global model. They're both valid for 03 GMT, Friday the 17th, and really just illustrating very windy conditions on both of them in the northern half UK. In fact, around northeastern Scotland, they are showing gusts of about 70 miles an hour. The details uncertain through the 16th, the 17th and the 18th of February. Definitely, though, something to keep an eye on. The risk, at least, of damaging gusts of wind, disruptive gusts in the northern half of the UK, and windy conditions for a time even in the south. Rainfall. These are the forecast totals in millimetres for days 0 to 5. The chart on the left is from the ECM model, the one on the right from the GFS. Both have the highest values in the northwest of the UK, but there are significant differences in central and eastern counties. ECM going for a wetter scenario than the GFS. The reason is that it's taking more active disturbances across England and Wales, west to east, at times through the first week. Here's one chart just to illustrate that. 09 GMT, Thursday the 16th. There are some relatively heavy outbreaks of rain moving across southern and eastern counties. Very difficult to say which one's going to be closer to the mark, but I will look at the deterministic models to do a comparison in a moment. But just before that, here are the 0 to 10 day charts. Once more, the wettest conditions in the northwest of the UK. ECM continuing to show significantly higher rain totals in central and eastern counties than GFS. Right, so how do the deterministic models compare with each other towards the end of the first week? As a reminder, here is the GFS, which the animation was based on. The chart is for Monday the 20th. At this point, high pressure is dominant once more. It's built back up across the UK. The Canadian model shows something very similar, high pressure dominating. The German icon, a little bit different, high pressure centered slightly further southwest, but all in all, a relatively settled scenario being painted by this one as well. ECM, though, with the higher rain totals, is a little bit different. The high pressure further west in the Atlantic, disturbances just here in southern and central counties, bringing the chance of rain at this point. So it really helps to explain some of the differences there which were appearing in the rain totals during the first week and beyond. Finally, the UK Met Office Global, high pressure centred to the south, more of an Atlantic influence in the north of the UK and particularly the far north. Taking them all together, I think ECM is a little bit out on its own in terms of the amount of rain which southern and central counties can expect through the first week. There is the uncertainty there, though. It could be right. My gut feel at this point, based on looking at these different deterministic models, is that rain amounts in southern and central Britain will be staying low through week one. What none of the charts show is any significant cold weather, so good agreement that it's likely to be rather mild for much of this period. On to week two. Of course, at this range, it's all about trends and probabilities and the Ensemble data. Here's the 16-day GEFS plot for London. Air temperatures across the top. The trend is fairly clearly signposted. It's above average to begin with. The thick black line, the 30-year norm, all of the runs, virtually all of them at least, well above it. But there is a downwards slope here. Most of them are indicating cooler or colder air moving in, at least for a time, because towards the end, the runs are mostly climbing back above that thick black line. There are, though, one or two later on which are bringing in very cold air. The -10 Celsius line here is indicative of deep cold in the UK, and just towards the end there, a couple of the individual perturbations, as they are known, the runs within the ensemble, are falling down towards it or even a little bit below it. Could that be the impact of the SSW, which I discussed at the start? Possibly. It's a little bit early, but it's the time period when an impact could start to make its presence felt. But all in all, it looks like quite a mixed picture through the second week in terms of air mass temperatures, above average, close to or maybe dipping a little bit below it before recovering. Rain across the bottom, there are a few spikes there, and the number of them increases a little bit from around the 24th or 25th of February. All in all, though, it seems like it's going to be relatively dry once more through week 2 in the south. Not completely dry, small amounts of rain, but below the norm. The 2-meter temperatures, so the ones that we actually experience, there is a trend downwards. The amount of yellows, which indicate between 11 and 15 Celsius, decrease here through the middle part of the period, though towards the end they climb upwards again. And some of the dark green shows up those of the cold runs between 1 and 5 Celsius. All in all, though, the signal is for temperatures to be above the average early on, dipping through the middle part of the period. Nothing dramatic, though, before climbing towards the end. I just thought it would be worth breaking out all the values in that data table to illustrate one thing, which is that sometimes we get a huge range of possible outcomes towards the end there. The warmest run in the ensemble is going for maximums of 16.4 Celsius, and the coldest run at the top there is only showing a maximum of 1.9 Celsius. So that's a huge possible range of outcomes. Of course, the majority of the runs are somewhere closer to the middle. And when looking at the ensemble data, it's always about trying to identify the biggest clusters to determine which is the most likely scenario. The very cold one and the very mild one are both much less likely because they're out on their own. Going up to Manchester, the air temperature profile very similar to the London one. The dip is perhaps a little bit more pronounced. The ensemble mean, the thick purple line, falling below the 30-year average. In terms of rainfall, once again, it's actually quite similar to London, although there are a few more spikes, a little bit wetter, but it doesn't look overly wet. Also notice that the snow row across the bottom there climbs through week 2. It reaches a maximum of 12. The highest value it can show is 33. Just around about a 1 in 3 chance, therefore, of snow falling in this part of the UK. I think about the 23rd to the 25th of February is when the highest values are being shown. And it really would suggest maybe more of a northwesterly flow moving down across the United Kingdom just through that time. Not particularly cold, though, by any means, maybe a few wintry showers here. The 2-meter temperatures just reinforce the message. The same trend as on the London data table, but there is more dark green here than there was on the London one. So a little bit colder than in the south, but as expected, really, as we're heading northwards. Not very cold by any means. Up to Glasgow, the air profile again following the same general pattern, but the dip is slightly more pronounced here than it was on the Manchester chart, which was more so than the London one. The key difference probably, though, is the amount of rain spikes. There are notably more here than there were on the previous two. The snow row values similar to Manchester, reaching a maximum of 12. A wetter pitch from the northwest. The 2-meter temperatures, again, there's more dark green here on the Manchester one through the middle part of the period, and there was more on that one than on the London one. So the temperatures are dipping as you head northwards across the UK. Even a little bit of blue showing up, just a very small minority. I think that equates to 1 run in the ensemble going for maximums of between -8 Celsius and 0 Celsius. But general picture from them all is that it's going to be colder as you head northwards through the second week. a greater chance of snow falling, not necessarily accumulating, but it doesn't look particularly cold even in the northern half of the UK. So I suspect it could be one of those scenarios where for a time at least there is significant snowfall over the Scottish mountains and higher parts of the Pennines, but down at low level it's not going to be a big risk. The 10-day GEFS mean surface level pressure plot generated by averaging out all of the runs in the Ensemble, so Thursday the 23rd, points towards that type of thing. High pressure centered to the southwest, maybe some colder air moving over the northern half of the UK in particular, but it looks fairly transient, maybe polar maritime air, as I've been saying, pushing in from the northwest. At this time of the year, it's not going to bring particularly cold conditions to southern and central regions. Even in the north, as I say, it's probably mostly going to be over high ground where there is that chance of snow. ECM, very, very similar. A high pressure from the Azores building north eastwards, but the chance of some colder air, again, just moving down from the northwest. The mean surface level pressure data tables, so the last two charts were showing the forecast surface level pressure from all of the runs of the Ensemble at a given time. What these show is the individual runs moving forwards through time, so the second week here. And the yellows and oranges show mostly higher than average pressure, the greens and blues lower. There is a trend downwards. The London chart here on the left shows pressure falling through the middle part of the period, and then the signal is for it to be increasing later on. A similar trend on the Edinburgh one on the right, not quite as well signposted, but broadly speaking similar. I think just a chance there, as I've been suggesting, that colder air could move down through the middle of week 2, at least for a time, pressure declining, maybe to the west, and more of a northwesterly flow moving down across the UK. Probably quite briefly though, before high pressure would be building back. So, to try and summarise all that, week 1, changeable, wettest in the northwest, but even in southern Britain there probably will be some rain, although amounts are not likely to be great. Mild days, and for a time it could become very mild. Temperatures could reach 15 or even 16 Celsius in the southern half of the UK. The nights vary. There is that chance of some patchy fog and frost, particularly early on, but on the whole, temperatures staying above freezing point in most of the UK. Also, keep an eye on the possibility of it turning very windy in the northern half of the UK in particular around the 17th, but the details are uncertain. Stay up to date with the short-range forecasts. Week 2, changeable when viewed across the UK as a whole, but once more, wettest in the northwest, driest in the southeast, and in southern Britain, amounts of rain probably remain small. Temperatures over the entire period, close to the norm, but there is that chance of mild conditions early on and towards the end with a colder interlude in between. And that would lead to the possibility of wintry showers in the north. Is there any sign of that sudden stratospheric warming having an impact? I think on balance there isn't really anything yet in the data, but perhaps this time next week it will become clearer whether or not it is going to lead to a colder spell of weather in the UK. So, there we have it. Is the meteorological winter going out with a bang or a whimper? Well, there is that possibility of it turning very windy for a time during the first week, particularly in the north. But if your criteria is cold and snowy conditions, then the answer would appear to be a whimper. Nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. As ever, if you did, then please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. Thank you for watching now. Bye.